Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. There is never a dull moment in the Trump White House, and this is the breaking story on this Friday night. The president ousts his chief of staff and announces that General John Kelly, current Secretary of Homeland Security, retired from the United States Marine Corps, and a former head of the United States Southern Command, will now have a new command at the White House, where it is clear that there has been division and sniping. And from what we have seen, General Kelly is not really the sort to put up with too much of that. The president hinted his decision today when he was here in New York.
I want to congratulate John Kelly, who has done an incredible job of Secretary of Homeland Security. Incredible. One of our real stars. Truly one of our stars. John Kelly is one of our great stars.
So that wasn't too long before he shouted this to reporters after the news broke.
Reince is a good man. John Kelly will do a fantastic job. General Kelly has been a star, done an incredible job thus far, respected by everybody. A great, great American. Reince Priebus, a good man. Thank you very much.
Rain, rain, rain coming down during all of that. It's been quite a roller coaster for Reince Priebus. He was the subject of Anthony Scaramucci's ire in that vulgar takedown that was reported last night. Today, though, they both boarded Air Force One together. The New York Post looked at it all this way, calling it a game of survivor between the president's big players. So what happens now at the White House? Here now, senior counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, good evening. Good to see you tonight.
Good evening, Martha.
So
My pleasure.
He's going to take over on Monday, according to these reports. Tell me what's different at the White House because of all of this come Monday. How does it look?
I'm really glad everyone's taken the high road tonight, Martha. Obviously, the president, in thanking Reince Priebus, and I would add his wife, Sally, and their children, to his sacrifice on behalf of his administration. The president called him a good man. I think we would all agree with that. He also is saying that General Kelly, Secretary Kelly at Homeland Security, has served his country honorably in this role and previously. And I think that everybody who works in this administration has to know that there were two people who were elected to anything. And if you don't see your name on the list of Donald J. Trump and Michael R. Pence, then you need to get with the program. And that's not about any particular colleague, but just why we're there. We're there because Americans elected one slate over the other based on the issues on which they ran. They want their taxes reduced. They do want Obamacare repealed and replaced. They do want the government to be less intrusive, invasive, expensive, and expansive. They do want us to be safer and more prosperous.
So would you say that the people... Let me ask you this. Would you say, because my question was how things change come Monday, because we've watched what has happened over the course of this week, and it's been pretty ugly, which you have been witness to, no doubt. So what's different? When John Kelly walks in that door, is everyone still going to have the kind of access to the president that they've had before? For example, is Anthony Scaramucci, who made it clear that he wanted to report directly to the president, will he be going through General Kelly now or not?
Well, that's just a pecking order question I think is beside the point, and here's why. We all serve the president and this country. And in doing so, the president and his new chief of staff will decide what the right organizational structure and protocols are. And I guarantee you that people will respect that pecking order and those protocols. I think in General Kelly, the president has selected a generational peer and someone who knows how to organize large structures. That's not to say that our outgoing chief of staff did not. I'm merely answering your question about the new one. And it was a week ago that Reince Priebus said, upon Sean Spicer's resignation, that there's a fresh start. So I think people will look upon this the same way too. But I think Reince should be thanked for his service and his sacrifice. These are tough jobs. It's a pressure cooker environment. It's different from previous White Houses because, as you know, day in and day out, Martha, people want us to get clouded up and gummed up with the noise and not really want to cover the news.
I mean, I couldn't
and it's
agree
a challenge.
more.
It's a privilege.
But the problem is that
it's a challenge.
Sometimes there's so much noise that it makes it very difficult. So are you saying that, all of the difficulties that existed were because of Reince Priebus? I mean, now that he's gone, are those things going to go away under General Kelly? And what about Steve Bannon, who became very close to Reince Priebus and was also on the list of those that, got some pretty scathing comments from Anthony Scaramucci? Is Steve Bannon going to be in this for the long haul?
The only person who can answer the personnel questions are the president and the individuals that you're talking about, whether they choose to continue to serve no matter who they are. Let me repeat again for my third or fourth time for the viewers and for the media who are watching and trying to miscue what you and I are talking about. I want to thank Reince for his service. I served under him as the chief of staff. And he also was part of our campaign, obviously. The RNC was instrumental, just as I thanked Sean Spicer last week for his service. The fact is that every place of work, I believe, has to understand the rules, the structure, the protocol, the pecking order, and follow those rules. But I also will say to you, Martha, that we all work for an unconventional president, and that's a compliment to the president. He vanquished 16 opponents who were formidable. He had all the odds against him. People are counting him out after health care. I would never bet against Donald Trump. He's not going to allow one misvote by the Senate last night to stop him from providing relief from all these Americans who are suffering. He's not going to allow personnel changes to get in the way of tax reform or pushing back against these MS-13 gangs like he did today and making real changes. So I think it will be a positive step forward in that this is the change that the president believed he should make at this time. And I think those who respect that change and want to work for this chief of staff and this president and this vice president will continue on. Those who feel like their highest and best use for the cause is elsewhere. And may I say, too, Reince Priebus, Sean Spicer, Anthony Scaramucci, General Kelly, Kellyanne Conway, all of us, we're on the same team here, the same larger team that believes in security and prosperity and accountability and transparency.
I hear you, but, we've all known that there have been...
we're pushing the agenda through.
I understand, and your points are well taken, but there has been so much divisiveness in the White House, and that has been very clear. So my question is, what is it about General Kelly that the president believes is going to calm that? And, I think that the president's way of doing things are absolutely why he was elected by the American people. So, and I know there's an effort to not want to take away from that kind of energy. And sometimes that looks a little bit like chaos. But this is going to be a very different situation. General Kelly is a military man who will like to see an order to the way that things are done. So I'm asking, how do you anticipate, as someone that's been there since the beginning, when you go in there, how is it going to look and feel different with this man in charge?
I'll be very curious to see what General Kelly, our new chief of staff, says on Monday about that very thing when we walk into a senior staff meeting or we meet with him one-on-one or as individual groups. I'm sure he'll be very interested to know what each of us is working on and how we see our best and highest use so far, what we think has worked, what we think has not worked, what the protocols are in the place. And again, when you're in any place of work, Martha, you're sitting in yours now. I'll be in mine again, with a new chief of staff this weekend or Monday. And you have to know what the structure and the rules are, and people are going to respect those. And I think that it's a really good inflection point
let me ask you this,
after 6 months in this White House to know what the structure is and the rules. And to carry forward that way. I also think this helps the rest of the cabinet as well, because General Kelly is coming most recently from the cabinet. And this cabinet was handpicked by President Donald Trump. He put these men and women and convinced many of them to work in this cabinet to publicly serve.
So would you say, let me just ask
this will
you,
help as well.
Would you say that there's relief among the staff tonight?
I think there's a great deal of enthusiasm about what may be. And again, whether Reince Priebus stayed as chief of staff is up to Reince Priebus and the president. That's very clear. So once that decision was made, I think my answers come from post-decision, is what can we expect from this? There is an enthusiasm. There is a curiosity. And what I want to emphasize to you is because there are, and I said this past Monday in the first communications meeting our new director, Anthony Scaramucci, held with the comm staff, the press and comm staff. And I said to him very clearly in front of all these people that there are dozens of talented men and women who work in the White House who are not household names, who have worked their tails off the first 6 months in the furtherance of the good of the country. And they will continue, and I think they'll continue under a new chief of staff, but they're there because they saw in President Trump somebody who's a fighter, who ran on very specific policies, who actually had the more economic, optimistic message.
I think
and
that's a message that the American people will really like to hear. Like to hear you say. I think one of the problems has been that the personalities have been so strong, coming from so many different areas in the White House, that they have overwhelmed, in some cases, the agenda. So, do you think that General Kelly, or do you hope that General Kelly will sort of say to everyone, you know what, you're all soldiers in this army, and none of you is more important than the other, and we're all here to serve the president?
He may say that, but I'm going to harken back to August 12th, the day that Mr. Trump offered me the campaign management position. It was a Friday, and we had a conversation at his initiation. And I said to him before we left the office, and he went on to Altoona and Erie, Pennsylvania, with RNC Chair Reince Priebus that day, I remember. I said to him something that day I'm going to repeat now to my colleagues in the White House. I said to him, I'd like to say, Mr. Trump, I'll never address you by your first name, and I don't consider myself your peer. And he said, okay. That sounds great. I mean, he's a very positive person, frankly, a great boss for women. And the reason I said that was because I do think that it's important to set up that level of deference and humility when you've got someone who's your boss, now the President of the United States, now the Chief of Staff, a General, a Secretary, who is clearly your senior, your superior. And he's never made me feel anything but part of the team and a senior member of the team. But I think it's very important that people not treat elected officials like the president and the vice president as their peers. Again, don't read into that, everybody.
I think that everybody has respect for the office, and they want that kind of relationship between the staff and the president at the White House, to be sure. I want to play something that Newt Gingrich said about the staff for you, and I want to get your thoughts on it. Yeah. Let me just play that, and then we'll get back to your other thought. Go ahead.
He obviously likes the limelight. He obviously likes being in the media. I would say right now that he's being more pugnacious than effective. Scaramucci's full of himself. I think he got down here from New York. I think he's all excited. And I think he's frankly talking more than he's thinking. I mean, I think this is, he needs to slow down and learn the business.
What would you say to Newt about that comment about Anthony Scaramucci, Kellyanne? Well, I know Newt Gingrich and Anthony Scaramucci both very well. I've talked to both of them recently. I consider them friends and colleagues. I talked to Anthony today, and I think Anthony would agree with some of that. He's been very forthcoming about his remarks. He found them to be colorful. He regrets some of the language that he used and how it was used. But he's also very passionate, and the president does like passionate fighters. And I think the communications role is one that is more long-term strategic thinking. And to have a staff of dozens around you, like the press and comm shop does in our White House, Martha, where you can deploy men and women to their best and highest use. Some are really terrific about taking the incoming from the press, the questions, and and giving the briefing, like Sarah's doing such a great job doing. And then comms really has to stop and say, what does tax reform look like to the country a month or two from now? How will we convey what the president just said in Long Island today about MS-13?
Yeah,
what does
that's
the country
what the job
need to
is.
know
I mean,
about our new
that's
secretary,
absolutely,
about our new chief of staff?
Yeah,
so
I think that's what the job is.
But I think
that's what he
possesses. That's right. Newt Gingrich. I'm sorry, there's a little delay here. Newt Gingrich and Anthony Scaramucci both possess these qualities that Donald Trump, as president, really appreciates, which are that they're fighters and they're passionate and they're articulate about the agenda and why they're there. And the fact is that this president really should be respected and regarded as somebody who's always welcomed a diversity of viewpoints, ideas, individual backgrounds, and he will continue to do that. And not because he sets up some kind of silly games of thrones. I read that as such nonsense. And not because he wants a bunch of yes men and women around him. That is just not true. What he wants, though, is to receive all the inputs and ideas, and he's confident enough that then he weighs all those consequences and he makes his own decision, and he was elected to do so.
I want to ask you a question about Jeff Sessions, because I interviewed Jeff Sessions and General Kelly together at the border a while back. They seem to have a very good relationship. And I wonder if General Kelly might have said to the president that he would like to see Jeff Sessions be able to keep his position if Kelly were to come on as chief of staff. Do you know whether or not this is a good sign for Jeff Sessions, that General Kelly is going to have this high position now in the White House?
I can't divulge private conversations about personnel, but I will tell you this. I think it's a great sign for anybody in the cabinet or the senior staff or in this administration when they're doing their job. And the president very clearly said the other day that, and Sarah Sanders, our press secretary, said that he is disappointed in the recusal, obviously, and frustrated by this ridiculous Russian investigation that's gone absolutely nowhere, by the way, but that he wants everybody to do their job. Now, Jeff Sessions is down in El Salvador this week as part of the crackdown of the MS-13 gangs. You've got the president doing it in Long Island. You've got Jeff Sessions doing it with some of our counterparts in El Salvador and the neighboring countries. Anybody who's doing their job will, I think, keep their job for as long as the president and that individual agree it's, again, the best and highest use. The other thing I would just say is that when the president announces staff, I think that people should stop always reading into it as who's up, who's down. You know what interests the president most? The fact that the stock market is up and that the unemployment rate is down. That's why he's there. The fact that illegal boarding crossings are down, and the fact that confidence in the markets.
But Kellyanne, I have to say, you know, I agree with you. That's what the American people care about. They care about health care. They care about their jobs.
Yes,
but the
do.
President tweets about Jeff Sessions, tweets about Reince Priebus, you know, and this is what makes the dynamic that's happening in the White House so much in the forefront, because it's hard to get past that.
But, you know, Martha, I appreciate the fact that the president surrounds himself with, like you said, strong personalities. I mean, one of the dumbest criticisms I hear, particularly on TV, from people who have never worked in a White House, let alone this White House, is this idea that the president has no one around him to tell him no, to disagree with him. That is simply not true. He invites disagreement and dissension. He also invites polite discussion and research and data, and he weighs all the consequences, and he's always willing to learn. Look at how he leaned all the way into healthcare, even though he's done his job. He got elected on repealing and replace with no footnotes and no bibliography and no but-fors. And yet he's waiting. He's been there for 6 months. He's waiting for the Senate to act. They've been there talking about it for 7 years. So this is someone who's very confident to have strong personalities. But look at what else happened this week. Is anybody talking about Russia? I thought it was so important that all we could talk about is Russia, Russia, Russia. That content analysis, 75% of the coverage was about Russia, even though 6% of Americans said it was the most important issue. But there's nothing there. That's why there's nothing there. Jared,
no, I mean, we pointed out the you know, sort of lack of balance in the things that are covered, and we're going to be talking a lot about the MS-13 visit that the president had in New York in a few moments. So I hope you'll get a chance to listen to that too. Kellyanne, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight,
you, Martha.
as always. Have a good weekend. All right. So as you know, Reince Priebus is no longer the chief of staff, and he did speak to CNN just a few moments ago. We're going to listen to that in just a second. Joining us now. Oh, let's listen right now.
I'm always going to be a Trump fan. I'm on Team Trump, and I look forward to helping him achieve his goals and his agenda for the American people.
But why did you resign? I'm still trying to understand. I understand that you told the president you wanted to resign. He accepted your resignation yesterday. But why? What, were there a series of issues, or was there one thing that came up and and you decided, you know what, I no longer can do this?
No, look, I think the president wanted to go to a different direction. I support him in that.
All right, joining us now, Fox News politics editor Chris Direwalt and Fox News media analyst Howard Kurtz. Gentlemen, welcome. Good to have you here tonight. Busy night, as always, covering the Trump White House. Chris, what are your thoughts tonight?
Well, I would say that the president has set himself up with a pretty tough pass-fail test here by bringing somebody who is no nonsense, like General Kelly, into his White House. So you got a guy like Priebus, as you see there. Priebus is going to do whatever Trump tells him to do, or whatever he thinks Trump might like. He is definitely the receiver here, not the quarterback. But with Kelly, Trump's got to be ready. I'll put it this way. One of two things is going to be true here. Either Donald Trump is ready to have discipline and order in his White House, and that includes for him. And if that's true, then Kelly could be this could be a turning point for an administration that's been a chaotic mess most of the time. Or Donald Trump's not ready to listen to Kelly. He's not ready to follow rules, not ready to protect people who are his favorites from the rules. And if he's not ready, this will be yeesh.
Yeesh. Howard,
yeesh.
What do you think?
Well, I'm searching for some Scaramucci-like holy blank words to describe the magnitude of what's going on here. Look, Reince Priebus.
Please, we have a ban on some of those words. So
okay, I'll be careful.
Choose wisely.
Whether it was Reince Priebus' fault or not, and he was widely perceived to be a weak chief of staff, this has been a White House at war with itself. Lots of internal backbiting, sniping, and leaks against each other, and also making the president look bad. So what does the president do? He brings in a guy who's been a commander in war. And so whether or not General Kelly can bring some kind of military precision to this operation would be a big improvement in terms of message discipline and all that. But Donald Trump remains the commander-in-chief, and I doubt he's going to completely change his style of tweeting new policies or, kind of saying things when he wants to say them in the way that he wants to say them.
First of all, let's go back and play this soundbite. This is President Trump on November 9th, 2016, with his buddy Reince Priebus.
I never had a bad second with him. He's an unbelievable star. He is, that's right, how did you possibly guess? So let me tell you about Reince. And I've said this. I said Reince, and I know it. I know it. Look at all those people over there. I know it. Reince is a superstar. But I'll tell you, Reince is really a star. And he is the hardest working guy